Welcome, football fans, to the Squirtle Paydirt Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Diesel Horse Law Firm. I am your host, Andy Campbell. We have finally reached Week 10 of the Oklahoma High School football season. We're looking forward to discussing some of the big-time matchups tonight on the show. I am joined tonight by Tom Nelson and Mark Rogers, who are some of the voices of Squirtle throughout the football and basketball seasons. Our next guest, Jace Sternberger. We had actually Jace on last week, but the show did not record, so you saw some of his picks on the Squirtle Facebook page. Jace is from Kingfisher, played college football at Kansas and Texas A&M before being drafted in the third round by the Green Bay Packers. Our next guest, Chris Wilfong. He was born and raised in the state of Arkansas, but moved to Wagner in seventh grade to join Bulldog Nation, playing both football and basketball. Chris played JUCO hoops at Rogers State and graduated from Northeastern with a degree in computer science. Chris spent 12 years working at the OSSAA, then helped start OKRankings.com, and then also started IowasAtTheGame.com back in 2007, which is a website that I reference every week preparing for the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that website.
And Chris is currently the technology director at Kingfisher Public Schools. So two Yellow Jackets on the panel tonight. And before we get into these games, Squirtle will not be airing a Paydirt show this Friday. So our show tonight, the Pick'em Show, will be a little bit different than normal. The first four games we discuss will be on the Squirtle Network, so you can watch those games for free on Squirtle.tv or the Squirtle app. Then the next four games we discuss will be some of the biggest non-Squirtle Network games around the state this week. But again, let's start with our Squirtle Networks games. We'll start game number one. A playoff spot is on the line in Class 2A District 1 as the Perry Maroons travel to Alva to take on the Gold Bugs. Perry currently sits fourth in that district with a 4-2 record in district play, while Alva is 3-3 in 2A1. Tom Nelson, who moves on to the playoffs next week?
A lot on the line in this one. Perry, Alva, and Chisholm are playing for two open playoff spots in 2A1. If Perry wins, they're going to be third because they beat Chisholm last week. If Alva wins and Chisholm loses to OCS, a three-way tie, there'll be some tiebreakers in there. Alva could sneak in if they do win. Perry has looked good beating the four teams outside of Millwood and OCS in the district. Gave Millwood all they wanted on the road before losing 18-6, and they have a good win over Chisholm just last week. They're playing well. Alva's coming off a 20-point loss to OCS. They've lost two of their last three. The Maroons lose. They're probably on the outside looking in. There's a lot to play for in this one. It's tough to pick a winner, but I think Perry's really going to be playing hard. I think the Maroons will get the win.
Mark Rogers.
Well, I don't know how many times I've said this, and you can probably find, and I was at thegame.com, that I never lost a football game to Perry. And I know they kind of got after Jace last week, but don't let that bother you at all. And also, Andy, I thought there were solar flares last week. I didn't think it had anything to do with audio, but I'm going with Alva, and I think it's a close game. It's a toss-up. I think that the team that has to travel on the bus quite a ways, which will be Perry this week since the game's at Alva, I'm gonna go with the Gold Bugs, and when they win, drinks are on me at the nightlight.
Let's go to the guy who got some messages from Perry Maroon fans last week, Jace Sternberger.
Yeah, I think it was a player. He's like 13 years old. It might have said middle school in his bio. Like, that's where I was. So I saw it today. I said, "Oh my gosh," because I went and checked. Yeah, but I have to go with Perry. I went with a lot of road teams last week. I think they had a huge win against Chisholm, and I think they're gonna take care of Alva this week.
Chris.
Well, I'm going to look at the historical side of this matchup. They played 34 times in the past since 1969. They are 17-17. So this is a rubber match. So Perry has won the last five, but I'm not going to pick Alva. My daughter lost to Alva in the 2016 state championship game at Washington. So if I picked Alva, she probably would never speak to me again. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Perry.
Chris taking Perry in the rubber match. Let's go to Class 4A2 for the next Squirtle Pick'em game as Bridge Creek travels to Hera. These two teams playing for pride as they'll both miss the playoffs, but both are 2-4 in district play in what is a really good district. Mark Rogers, kick us off. Bridge Creek at Hera.
I think both teams have had a little bit better season than maybe they have in quite a while. So Bridge Creek got a district win last week. I think I'm going to go with the home team in this one too. Hera's pretty good, but you mentioned these playoff spots have been on lockdown in 4A2 with Bethany, Blanchard, Tuttle, and Newcastle. That the game with Newcastle and Bethany this week should be a pretty good one. So I'm going with the Panthers over the Bobcats.
Tom Nelson.
It's a Week 10 battle of two teams moving on to basketball season next week. After a 3-1 start, Bridge Creek played the 4 playoff-bound teams in this district and lost all 4 by an average score of 42-4. A couple of safeties in there, I guess. The Bobcats got back on track last week. They beat Tecumseh. This is a big one for Bridge Creek as they try to post their first non-losing season since way back in 2010. Hera lost to the same 4 district teams by an average score of 39-12. And Hera has won the last 3 years in this series by 20, 35, and 12 points. Panthers are at home. It's senior night. That's good enough for me. I'm going to roll with Hera in this one.
Let's see what fan base is going to message Jay Sternberger this week. Jace, you're on mute.
I'm 100% on mute. I'm so sorry. Never in my life have cheered against for Hera. Brothers, we've always beat them when they've come down to the buckle of the wheat belt. I'm going to go Bridge Creek for Ryan Spangler.
All right, fair enough. Chris, let's go to you.
You know, I don't really have a pick in this. My wife just said, hey, whatever Mark Rogers picks them. So I'm going with Hera.
Smart woman.
Big playoff implications in this 2A2 matchup as the 7-2 Chandler Lions host the 4-5 Luther Lions on Friday. Jones is likely to win that district, but Chandler will hold on to the number 2 spot with a win against Luther. The Luther Lions, meanwhile, currently sit 4th in district, but need a win to hold off Crossings Christian in the playoff picture. Mark, let's start with you again.
I'm going to go with Chandler. I know that they lost their quarterback in the Jones game earlier this season. I still think that they've had a really rough schedule. They kind of ground out a win against Star Spencer last week, who's a really improved team. I'm going to go with Chandler. Chandler's got a lot of rivals. You know, I mean, in Lincoln County, they got a game with Stroud. They got Prague, who they don't play anymore. They've got Luther, both Battle of the Lions here. So they got a lot of games to get ready to play, but I think they'll beat Luther this week.
Tom Nelson.
Yeah, like Mark just said, Chandler's going to enter the playoffs without their quarterback. Alec Jackson got hurt against Jones. Braxton Estes has stepped in this game will be a much-needed experience game for him, for a guy who's only completed 33% of his passes, a couple of touchdowns, a couple of picks. This does put a bigger target on Carson Clagg. He had 260 rushing yards last week, and he's been huge, almost 1,500 yards rushing this season. Luther, from what I can tell, and as soon as I say this, something will happen and I'll find out that I'm wrong, but it looks like Luther needs a win and a miracle to make the playoffs. And the miracle is 0-9 Kellyville beating Crossings. The uncertainty at quarterback for the Lions is a bit of a wild card in this one, but I think they're going to ride Carson Clagg to another victory.
Jay Sternberger.
I'm going Chandler strictly off. I just found out that the guy from the Rangers, the pitcher, he's from Chandler. I had no idea. I mean, I don't pay. That's what I said. I need to pay better attention. So I got to root for Chandler. There's too much winning mojo going around right now.
Two former Oklahomans, or 2 Oklahomans pitching for the Rangers this week with Gray and Haney. Chris, let's go to you. Luther at Chandler.
Historical side, this series is 15-5 for Chandler since 1958. Luther has won the last 4, but I'm going to go with Jace on this one in honor of John Gray. Going with Chandler.
All right, let's go to our final Squirtle Network game to discuss tonight. And this is the Squirtle Game of the Week, which will be called by Tom Nelson and Adam Dieselhorst in Cub Dug on Thursday. This is a Thursday night game, correct, Tom?
Yeah, we'll be on Thursday night. And it's interesting that we opened up the season back in 0 week at Covington Douglas. We're going to be there for week 10.
And this is a District B3. Sealing is going to win that district, but with a win over Southwest Covenant on Friday. I don't want to assume too much there, but the other 2 playoff teams in this district face off with O'Keene at Cub Dug, which is our Squirrel Game of the Week on Thursday night. Whippet 7-2 overall, 3-1 district play. Cub Dug also 7-2, but they are 4th in district play after a 48-0 loss to Sealing a week ago. Tom, you're calling the game. Give us your preview.
Well, this is the best season in O'Keene since they went 10-2 10 years ago. Tanner Allen's coming there. He's wasted no time establishing his philosophy. The Whippets have beaten everybody except the two teams they probably weren't going to beat, Laverne and Sealing. Laverne in the non-district, Sealing in the district. Luke Swartwood, the kid who transferred in from Canton, is 60 yards shy of 1,000 yards rushing. Brody Jenkins has been a solid dual threat quarterback for them. They went on the road and they are second. They went on the road in this one and they're second in B3 at 8-2 overall. And they get a home game in the playoffs next week. A lot on the line for the Whippets. Wildcats are also 7-2, but they have 2 district losses, which has them 4th in the standings. They're 2 games ahead of Canton and Wacomo, so they're going to the playoffs. They could get into second. From what I can tell, once again, I hate doing this because it turns out I might be wrong, but because I'm horrible at math. They can beat O'Keene by 15. Sealing beats Southwest Covenant by 15. If that happens, there's math and a tiebreaker in there. It's all above my pay grade, but there might be a shot. Keeps it interesting at least. Covington Douglas has a nice stable of offensive weapons, but it all starts with their quarterback, Ford Smith. He's thrown for over 1,700 yards. He's got 20 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. He leads them in rushing, almost 800 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. I saw both these teams early. I watched Covington Douglas beat Timberlake 22-6 back on 0 week, then saw O'Keene make their first statement this year. They went to Waynoka and beat the Railroaders 38-28 a week later. I'm not going to make a pick because I'm calling it, and I'm going to gladly run with that excuse. This is going to be a really good ball game. Oklahoma picked at O'Keene. The Oklahoman picked at O'Keene 52, Covington Douglas 46. I'm hoping I get that kind of a game on the Squirtle Game of the Week. We'll see.
Mark?
I always like picking after Tom because now I feel like I've got a lot more idea of what's happening in this game. I'm still sorry about picking Garber over Covington last year when Covington won 55-0. But that's not going to keep me from going. Much respect to Covington. They've got a great program there. But I'm going to go with O'Keene in this game. The Whippets will win in Covington in a close one. That's a lot of points, though. I mean, I don't like taking the over-under of like 90, 98. It's a lot.
A lot of points. Jay Sternberg.
Well, I was gonna go Covington, but that was 2 great sales pitches on O'Keene, just strictly off the fact that Covington, they gave up a lot of points, and I feel like at home that's always embarrassing. So I'm gonna be the black sheep right now. I'm gonna take O'Keene, or not O'Keene. I'm gonna take Covington Douglas.
Jace going with the home team. Chris, let's go to you.
All time, this is 1-0 Covington last year, and but I'm going to stay with the consensus, and I'm going to go in honor of former head coach David Glover, who coached at O'Keene for 7 years. Going with O'Keene.
Coach Glover's a good reason to go. He also was my coach at Fairview, so always good to hear Coach Glover's name. All right, we've talked about the 4 Squirrel Network games. Now let's go to the non-Squirrel Network games that we're going to discuss tonight.
These are going to be tough.
These are 4 really good games that I'm excited to see how these turn out. We'll start 6A Division II, where the number 1 and number 3 teams will face off for a district title in Stillwater on Friday. Muskogee 8-1 overall, with our only loss coming to Carl Albert, who we'll discuss in just a minute. Mark, who gets the big win in Stillwater on Friday?
Wow. Muskogee looks like they've been kind of slowing down a little bit. They got pushed to the brink last week by Bartlesville, who's really playing good right now. They don't have wins to show for it, but they've been playing competitively against good teams, and that might be a team to watch out for in the playoffs. Oh, man. Bird Ficklin at Muskogee is going to be the best player on the field here. I don't like the fact that Muskogee's on the road, but I will take the Roughers over the Pioneers.
Tom.
Yeah, playing for a district championship game in 6A2 District 1. 2 undefeated in the district teams. They got the scheduling right. Love those Week 10 matchups with that on the line. Muskogee's number 1 in 6A2. Stillwater's number 4. Muskogee's given up 1 point less than Stillwater in district games and has outscored Stillwater by 65 points in the district. And Mark mentioned the Ficklin kid. He's been a stud quarterback. 68% of his passes for 270 yards a game with 28 touchdowns, just 4 picks. Also leads them in rushing, just under 500 yards rushing a game or for the season. For Stillwater, I saw them a couple of weeks ago when they played Sand Springs. Holden Thompson, averaging 170 yards a game on the ground, had 331 yards and 3 touchdowns against Tahlequah last week. Now, last year, Stillwater went on the road, beat Muskogee to win the district on their way to the state title. This year, I'm going to say Muskogee's going to go on the road, beat the Pioneers and win the district, and go on to win the state title. Making that pick right now.
I'm going above and beyond what was required of him tonight with picking Muskogee at Stillwater game. Jace, let's go to you.
I'm going Eastern Oklahoma on this one. Another fun fact: my grandpa was the senator for 12 years of that area in Muskogee, so I'm gonna go with Muskogee on this one.
Jace taking the rougher. Let's go to you, Chris.
Historically, they played 15 times since 1950. Stillwater owns the series 10-5. Most of those matchups were in the playoffs. Muskogee has never beat Stillwater in the regular season. Stillwater owns that 4-0, and Stillwater has won the last 6 out of 7 games. So, but I am going to, again, I'm going to go with Jace on this. I'm going to go east side. I'm a former Fort Gibson guy, so I'm going to go east side on this, and I'm going to go with the Roughers.
Hey, if we ever need a guest again from the great town of Kingfisher, we're going to go Jace and Chris and not Michael Swisher. You guys are just killing it way better than Michael Swisher ever does. So
I don't know if we can fist bump on this, but maybe.
Yeah.
that's right. All right. The Piedmont Wildcats have had a strong season this year with a 7-2 record, but dropped a tough game to Bishop McGuinness last week, 19-14. Piedmont will go on the road on Friday to take on one of the best teams in the state, undefeated Carl Albert Titans. Mark, give us your thoughts on this matchup.
Carl Albert is loaded. They played well enough to beat Guthrie in the final minutes. That was showed me a lot about Guthrie, but there's 4 really, really, really good teams in this class. It's Elgin, Carl Albert, Guthrie, and Del City. So I think Piedmont might have a chance. In the playoffs last year, they went in the road and upset Midwest City. They probably get Elgin this year if they lose this game, which will be a tough task to go on the road down there. But I've got this one going to the Titans.
Tom Nelson.
Yeah, you mentioned that game last week. Piedmont lost to McGuinness 19-14. They were down early in that ball game, scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, got the lead for a little bit, but then gave up the winning touchdown late. Now they've got to go to Carl Albert. They'll have that 4th playoff spot no matter what happens. And CA has been blowing everybody out this year until last week, that great Guthrie game, which I think CA needed that kind of a game. They needed to have a tight game late and win it like that. They're not going to look past Piedmont. They're going to be 10-0 by the end of the week.
Jace.
I've never in my life growing up in Oklahoma, I think I've ever would pick against Carl Albert. I just, especially this time of the year, I don't see them starting to slip and fall anytime soon. So I'm going to go Carl Albert.
Chris.
Well, Carl Albert leads this series 9-1 since 2014. The only time Piedmont won in this series was 2019, which was a significant game because, Carl Albert lost in the regular season and then came back and won the state championship that year and beat them in the playoffs. But that game also ended Carl Albert's 40-game win streak that year, which is 5th all time for those that are counting. So I am most definitely going to go with everybody on this and go with Carl Albert. And if we want a bonus question, I have a great Gary Rose statistic if we want to end this with that.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Gary Rose, probably, one of the greatest coaches in Carl Albert or in Oklahoma high school football history. Coached 22 years. And in those 22 years, never lost, never missed the playoffs. And won how many state championships? Mark, Tom, you guys know that?
Boy, it's got to be around 8 or 9.
It's 10. That's close. That's close. He's won 219 games in his career, and he finished 4th in the district 3 times. How many district championships did Gary Rose win in his 22 years and 10 state championship career?
I'm going to go 19.
I'll say 20.
21.
21. Jace, how many district championships did Gary
I'll say 17.
17. Gary Rose won 5.
Really?
I felt that was a trick question.
Well, that was a trick question. That
Five,
was
five
right.
times. 5 times. And finished fourth 3 times.
Wow. I'll tell you what, I remember one day early in my radio career saying that Carl Albert hasn't had a losing season since Gary Rose's first year, and immediately got a text and said, Todd Graham. He was the only coach to ever have a losing season at Carl Albert. No, I don't think that's right, but it was Todd Graham, the last one.
Wow, that's another fun fact there. Hey, before we get into our next game, we kind of have a tradition at Squirtle the first week of the playoffs to do a playoff preview bracket show for each class. So we'll be doing that next week. Be sure to tune in and join our panelists as they talk about who they predict will win the state championship in each class, and who will be runner-up, and maybe a dark horse or a player to watch in those playoff races. So let's go to Pick'em game number 7 in Class 3A. Heritage Hall, undefeated yet again, has won the district in 3A2. The Marlowe Outlaws started the season 7-0, but have lost 2 in a row by a total of 4 points to Sulphur and Plainview. Tom Nelson, we'll start with you. Can Marlowe pull off the upset here?
Well, the Hall wrapped up their 10th straight district title. Brett Bogart has passed his dad, had his 110th win at the school, most in school history. Last week, they beat Sulphur 35-14. I thought Sulphur did a pretty good job of slowing down Andy Bass, but Barrett Travis gashed them for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns. Marlowe is most likely going to the playoffs, but last week's loss at Plainview brought a sour taste to senior night. Can they bounce back against Heritage Hall? Nope. I think the Hall has way too many weapons, and I think they'll win pretty big.
Mark?
This is one of those where we need Euclid to tell us who's going to go to the playoffs. There's a lot of scenarios in that district, a lot of teams that could potentially get in there between Pauls Valley, Plainview, Lone Grove, Marlowe. I think Sulphur and Heritage Hall are going to be in good shape there. Can you guys tell me what Brett Bogart's district record is? Anyone? Bonus points if you're listening in the middle of the day show today.
Well, has he not lost one? I think he might be undefeated.
72-0 in district play.
Yeah.
That's not bad. That's not bad. But so he's 10 years, 10 district titles, we said earlier. We had the game of the week in Marlowe earlier this year. I was really impressed with them. They got a good team. They're very, very physical. And I think that kind of physical play is something that Heritage Hall, Coach Bogart will challenge his teams. They didn't really respond to it last week in the first half against Sulphur, but I think this game will be close, but I think Heritage Hall wins.
Jace, kind of a Kingfisher rival here with Heritage Hall. Who are you going to win with?
I never want to cheer for Heritage Hall, but for some reason, I don't like Marlowe. They're 10 times worse than Heritage Hall. So I'll root for Heritage Hall because of Connor McGinnis.
He wants those texts and phone calls and emails.
I don't blame him. That at the state tournament, I mean, something about tractors and all the chants that they had in this. I get it. I mean, I would understand.
Chris, let's go to you.
Well, Heritage Hall undefeated and all that. There are 20 undefeated teams still left as of week 9, and Heritage Hall is one of them. I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm going to do what Jace couldn't do. I'm going to pick Marlowe. Outlaws for Marlowe.
The upset pick, the first district loss for Coach Vargas would be correct, right, Mark?
Yeah, that would be 72-1 after this. I'll tell you what.
If that goes down,
if that happens, I mean, they're probably going to send a package to Chris's house and make sure he never comes on the show again.
I don't know who the Hall would play in the first round of the playoffs next week, but I would not want to be them if the Hall gets beat this week.
This may be
North
my
Rock
last
Creek
show,
is
so thank you,
the
guys.
likely victim there.
Ugh.
We'll have to have Michael Swisher back on the show if there's no more Chris. That'd be really disappointing for a lot of reasons.
He might get the key to the city of Marlowe, though, so he might get more protection.
Fair enough.
He'll be drinking free down there whenever he goes through.
All right, our final game to pick tonight. A great matchup that will decide the district title in 2A7. Victory Christian Conquerors are 8-1 overall, with their only loss coming to Shiloh Christian in Arkansas. Victory will travel to Kiefer on Friday to take on the undefeated Trojans, who have been rolling opponents all season. Mark, let's go to you.
All right, I got tweeted at today on this game. This Kiefer team has been rolling along somewhat in anonymity, and they're in a tough district this year with Kansas. This up and down. There's not a whole lot of easy games in this one, and they beat Colquitt at the beginning of the season, who's really good and a Class A state championship contender. Or Kansas did, and so I think the fact that the Trojans won that game earlier this year, I think this is a close one. It's really hard to pick. It's almost a coin toss, but I'm going with Kiefer to win the game over Victory Christian.
Tom.
Well, Victory Christian has beaten every Oklahoma team they've played this year. As Andy said, their only loss is to Shiloh Christians, a very good 5A school in Arkansas. Quarterback is Aiden Hamilton, has a compelling backstory. Kid had 42 surgeries on his vocal cords, had trouble projecting his voice. He was a quarterback at Beggs. He transferred to Victory Christian to play anything but quarterback because of his voice issues. But then an injury to the starting quarterback last year put him back in the role, and he hasn't looked back since. Well over 1,000 rushing yards. He's accounted for almost 40 touchdowns this year. Kiefer has been a juggernaut offensively. They're scoring at least 58 points in 6 of their 9 games. They've got a lot of weapons with 7 different players that have scored at least 5 touchdowns this season. I think this could be a track meet. Take the over on this one. Lots of points. Victory Christian has won 4 of the last 5 years. There's been a lot of points scored in the series. Like Mark said, tough pick. I'm going to go the other way. High scoring game. I'm going to say Victory Christian's going to get the win.
Victory Christian at Kiefer. Jace, let's go to you.
I genuinely have never heard of the school at Kiefer, so I apologize. I genuinely have never heard of them, but I love what Mark said about them. That's my kind of mold. I love teams who are built like that, who know how to handle adversity and can take a couple of punches. So I'm gonna roll with Mark and go with Kiefer.
Chris.
This series is Victory Christian 5-1. Victory Christian's won the last 3 in a row. Kiefer, I don't know, kind of with Mark and Jace on this. They only have 1 state championship in school history. So what a great opportunity to get their second one. So I'm gonna go with Kiefer.
Tom's Island.
Well, that are the 8 football games that we are discussing tonight. And guys, at that time of year, we have a Squirtle basketball game of the week. This week, the panel was not aware that I was going to talk to them about this, so I'm springing this on them. But Adam Dieselhorst will be calling these games on Friday night. The Preston Pirates travel to Okarche to take on the Warriors, 2 great small school basketball programs and what should be really good matchups on Friday in Okarche. Again, Adam Dieselhorst on the call, Squirtle.tv and the Squirtle app. Tom Nelson, we're going to start with you. Both girls and boys programs all went to the state tournament last year. Preston at Okarche, girls and boys.
Well, I'm going to make the food pick on this one because nobody can touch Okarche's playoff spread when they break out the food. And they're playing in that beautiful gym at Okarche. I will take a Warriors and Lady Warriors sweep.
Mark?
Oh, man. Both of these teams are really good. Love the fact that they're playing this game and that they played it last year. Tom's pretty smart on the fact that they're going to make sure that he gets all the barbecue that he needs when he shows up at the Okarche gym and they roll out the red carpet for him. So both teams have a bunch of players back, especially on the boys' side. I will go with Warriors and Lady Warriors.
Hey, by the way, I failed to mention Luke McConnell is going to be on that call with Adam. He's the voice of Southern Nazarene University, so it'll be Luke and Adam on the call. Jace, I know you've been watching a lot of small school basketball film lately. Who you got, Preston at Okarche?
Well, I started sweating just thinking of picking against Sherry Myers' school, so I would never do that. So I'm no doubt going 100% Okarche. Would never pick against them.
Fair enough. Chris?
We've got to bring up his basketball bona fides. I believe 3-time MVP of the Week Capital Tournament. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
No, Jet was 3. I only did 2, unfortunately.
Oh, you got okay. I'm sorry about that.
Good thing you weren't that thing in 1986, man. We'd have given you a hard time.
All All right,
That's
Chris.
pre-Jared Reese, but that's pre-Blackwell influence on the Kingfisher basketball program.
No doubt.
Chris, give us your thoughts. Preston or Carl?
I love Jace's answer. Only two, right?
Yeah.
Only two. And I've only caught a pass from Aaron Rodgers for a touchdown. Much better does that get? So, let's see. All the past 10 years, I only have 10 years of data. Okarche leads both the boys and the girls series 3-2. And Okarche girls are 2-0 at home. And one more number just for fun, I calculated the number of wins in the past 10 years for girls basketball, and Okarche has the fifth most wins, and so their success has been very, very well. But again, I'm going with Jace on this too. I cannot pick against Sherry Myers teams and Okarche, so I'm going with the Okarche boys and girls.
And by the way, Adam Dieselhorst is saying there will be tacos on Friday night. It's a Mexican food spread in the hospitality room. So
That's a good stat.
That's tough. That's tough. My play-by-play in Mexican before the ball game is that's a tough combination. That's bad for everybody involved.
Ooh, I don't know if I want to touch that conversation anymore, Tom.
Sorry about the bad boiler, Tom. Hopefully that'll get better.
Well, thank you to our special guests tonight, Jace and Chris, for coming on the show. Really enjoyed having you guys. And thank you to all those watching at home for joining us on the Squirtle Pater Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Dieselhorst Law Firm. Be sure to tune in next week as we will have the football playoff preview show where we will preview every class in the state and give you the gold ball, silver ball winners, and maybe a dark horse who can step in and win a championship as well. Looking forward to the next few weeks talking about these playoff matchups. We'll be back again next week with our panel. We'll